Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a game that's come out fairly recently in early access called SimRail, the Railway Simulator. Now for those of you who are unfamiliar with this game, this is basically a Polish railways simulator. There's a lot of different things going on inside this mission. Right now we're in early access. The current build we have is 5/16/2023 here, so the middle of May kind of a thing. So it does change with time. So right now, what do we get? We get a nice little train driver section right here. If I click on that, it gives us a couple major routes. We have the Katowice to Warsaw over here. Of course, we have the Katowice to, I'm not even going to try those names here. These two different locations, hitting one of those, we can hit the next button, and they give us a few single-player scenarios. Now, the single-player scenarios are kind of range. Right now, we have a couple tutorial levels. These are pretty good. EU07, I will do a separate video on because it's freaking great. It's very, very old school. And, of course, they give you some much, much, much longer scenarios. Now, if I go, of course, popping over here to set as well here as well, and you can see we have a couple different ones. For me, the E186 tutorial is actually broken. You'll have a red signal that you cannot get through, and again, that's up to today, and you can see the date up at the tippy top there. They're probably going to patch it. I know they're already aware of it. Just kind of keep in mind that after you fly, fly as I like to say, as you drive one of these trains for 55 minutes and can't get to the last station, oof, that's painful right there. And of course, taking a look at these other ones. Now, one thing I thought was pretty cool here is that they do not allow you to do any multiplayer until you completed at least one of these tutorials. Another thing you're going to notice up in the upper left corner here is we have these little levels and everything like that kind of go along with it, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't really have a purpose other than preventing you from playing certain scenarios. Now, if we go back to our main page here, you're also going to notice we have a couple of different options. We have the editor, which is unfortunately not yet available. Pretty cool when it comes out. We have the depot, which is also unfortunately not yet available. We'll be able to see the different rolling stock. And then we have the multiplayer button. Multiplayer is the crux of this program, I would say, at this time. When you click here, there's a bunch of these major servers here, and there's so many different things going on these servers. For example, if I type in EN, this is going to give me all the English-speaking servers here. We have two English ones are in Europe, and we have one North America. You can see the North American one, not very occupied. It's the middle of the afternoon in the summer, so obviously nobody's gotten home yet. And come here on a Sunday afternoon, you might get a couple people here and there. And you can also see this one for Europe, and it's got this little sign here that says, no offense, track closures between stations. The reason that's on there is because this one has dynamic failures of different components, and they're not always caused by the actual operators themselves. Of course, if you want to go join the Deutsche Bahn here, that could be awesome, but keep in mind that there's going to be a language barrier there. Now, one thing you're going to notice with the multiplayer here, these are regular public servers, by the way, is the fact that there's a driver slot and a traffic dispatcher slot. Now, yeah, in this program, we actually have the ability to do dispatch. So if I were to click here, for example, grab one of these, I keep in mind I don't have as many hours in dispatch as I do zipping around the actual trains themselves. So they actually put a hard limit. And the reason for this is very, very apparent. I can't click on the one that you can see, but if you were to take a look at this one is a, it's intense. There's a lot of rails here. And you can actually see by the pictures here that this one right here, Bedson, for example, is electromechanical. You have to push the buttons to open up the individual signals, whereas the one you have here is vastly simpler. And just to demonstrate kind of what this looks like real quick, it's actually going to take you inside a little world here. Now, this is actually inside of the multiplayer server right this second. Keep in mind, if there's not a physical person here, it actually goes automatically to an AI, which is a really, really nice job. But you can see we have a lot of really cool tools. We have a nice little timetable. One of the great things about the timetables is you can actually open this up in a web browser if you wanted to. Now, why this is so incredibly useful is the fact I can now open this and I can right-click and I can confirm crossing times. I can dial all sorts of values in. I can get information about the trains. It's really, really helpful tool for a dispatcher. And if you have an extra screen, which I do, I can just pop it on that extra screen so it actually pops out. The other thing we have, of course, too, is we have an actual digital dispatching screen. Now, I can see right now I have a train 41112, which is sneaking up here is on block 516, and I can actually dispatch him directly through my station. And you can see the lights turn green. The signal automatically switched from red to green here to let people know. And then I can see way over here, there's another train that's the 16119. And if I wanted to, I could clear him through. This is considered kind of bad form. The major reason, in the early days, I used to do that all the time. And I learned quickly that when things go wrong, if you did set that up, to undo that is an incredible process. And keep in mind, this is an easy dispatch station. You could work this all afternoon and, reading a book basically, because all you have to do is open it, close it. And occasionally there are things like track closures, which get really silly. Or you have my favorite is when you have a player train, gets about halfway through and gets stuck between these two blocks here. And then you have to make everybody go around. But those don't happen very often, at least not at this dispatch station. Other dispatch stations are much more intense. Now, the cool thing here is there's a bunch of AIs and radios here. So one of the things you can actually do here is after you spot a specific train. So let's say 411112 has passed us. I can say, hey, train departed at, that was 41112. I'm not going to press enter there because he didn't. So I don't want to throw off the guy next to me. Keep in mind, if there's a human player here, they can actually communicate with you with the phone, which is pretty wild. And there's also a radio down here, which is also very cool. And you can communicate with the individual trains themselves if you need to speak with them. This whole feature is like it's its own game. And a lot of people actually spend a lifetime playing Dispatcher and never actually operate any of the locomotives themselves. Now, the good news here is if I press escape and I return to the main menu, as soon as I leave that multiplayer server, I have instantly turned over control to the AI, so it's not going to cause any issues. Now, the other half, of course, again, like I said, this mostly multiplayer game at this juncture that's going to change, is the fact that we now have the locomotive side of things. So let's go grab this one real fast. Go to driver, and the way they handle the locomotives is awesome. Basically, the AI is driving all the different trains you have on the track at any given time. And this is actually a list of every single one of them. All these digits, by the way, have a specific meaning for is it an express train? Is it a stop every 5-minute train? And all these different trains are listed by type. For example, if I want to do maintenance, there's no maintenance trains out right now. I've never seen other. If I do want to do cargo. By the way, for those of you who are new, cargo trains are without a doubt things to cut your teeth on. They always leave 15 minutes early, and you always get tons of free experience points because as long as you don't hit the brakes, you'll be fine. Well, obviously, you got to hit the brakes, but don't go too slow. Now, one thing you'll notice here is it actually tells you everything about the scenarios, and it actually gives you an estimate. For example, this one right here says it's going to take me about 18 minutes to complete. Now, if I go over to this passenger train, for example, 4118, these are all like stop-a-lot trains, so you're going to get quite a bit here, and you can see how long this trip is. It's going to take me 1 hour and 3 minutes. Now, one of the things you got to know about this, at least at this stage of early access, is there is no saving halfway through a mission. So the problem is let's say you fly, or I should say, I always like to say fly, you can tell I do a lot of that, 2 hours and 48 minutes and your computer crashes, guess what? You just lost all the experience points, even if it was a perfect run there. Some people just don't care about the experience points at all. Some people do. We can see here there is a 3-minute one. Let's just go ahead and load this one up real fast so I can show you what the trains look like. Now, you'll notice when we enter the world here, we have autopilot on, and that's really, really handy for us because it basically allows us at any point to press escape and activate the bot. The reason that's so helpful is because if you're in a situation where, let's say you have to answer the phone suddenly, or you have to go make a cup of coffee or something along those lines, you have the ability to do that literally at any point. And I think I'm going to need a couple shunts in order to, come on, give me what I need here. This is my favorite locomotive, and I will do a separate video on this just to kind of demonstrate its intricacies here, because there's a lot going on with it. Nope. Gonna have to do it the hard way. Now, one of the interesting things is as I'm cruising along on this route here, you'll see that there's a lot going on. I've got all sorts of different signage on the side here. I get some warnings. I can see my next post is incredibly 17 kilometers away. Actually, I could probably use a couple more shunts there. And all these buttons do something. Now, I've done a lot of different train simulators, and a lot of times you have buttons there, but they don't actually do there. They just, tempt you to get some stress out. Oh, give me this reserve switch. Ah! But believe it or not, they all work, and they all do have a purpose in here. There's actually a complete cold and dark tutorial that they give you for each of the different locomotives inside of this program that will walk you through all the different components and kind of how to use it. My cargo and my passenger here. Passenger, which means about that much reduction is going to get us back to speed here. Go ahead and take this crunch out of the train here. Be on the brakes. And again, everything control-wise is handled on, for me, it's the right hand because I have a numpad. Your brakes and everything like that, they provide you with handy-dandy little shortcuts. Like if I want to do full shunt, I can hold down shift and press the shunt button. If I want none, that was really bad for the train, sorry. I can hold down shift and hit my asterisk key. If I want to increase that throttle, I can't go anything past here. I have the ability to do all that. There's a little position where I can quickly tap the 6 key on my numpad, which will center the brakes. It makes it for a very, very, very easy train driving experience. Just me saying hello. Now, one of the neat things here is you probably noticed in the upper left corner that, I got myself a couple levels here. And the amount of levels that I've lost because of, I probably for every level I've gained, I've lost a level on account of the fact that I've accidentally, left a scenario earlier, or like sometimes the server restarts. Wait until it happens to it. Again, it's all early access shenanigans. It's things that'll all be corrected. But what they'll actually do is you get rated for every single thing you do on a section of track. So, for example, right now, by the way, you can shuttle this stuff off that if it bothers you. If you don't want to look at that, you can turn that on. Go ahead and hit the alerter here. You want to shut down that. You can press F4. And again, all those buttons have actual functionality here that make it a little bit easier or a little bit harder, depending on how distractible you are to actually operate this train. Now, this is actually a radio. One of the things I've never seen before in train sims is a working radio operator. But I can actually send messages to people who are on the channel. There's actually a switch here to change what channel I'm on, because different areas actually have different radio channels on them, which causes you have to actually tune it. There's actually a function in the gameplay settings that you can set so that you don't have to. I miss having a window here. You actually can go ahead and set those so that you can change automatically depending on what zone I'm in. Now, there's a wide variety of different missions. The mission we grabbed, as you saw, had an estimate of, 3 minutes or something like that. It's already taken a little more than that, but that's okay. But what it will do is it'll actually, continue, and I could, at any point, I'd escape, and again, activate that bot, or just leave this train completely, or the locomotive completely, and the train, I guess. And then, of course, the bot would take over, and 20 minutes later, I could rejoin my own train, which is always kind of a funny thing that you could try to do. But again, because of that drop-in, drop-out flexibility, it makes the multiplayer experience relatively seamless. If that was not a feature or you always had to run it to the conclusion, there's a sign for horns. You didn't give me credit for it, but I honked. I honketed. Oh well. You'll know it the first 10 times that you miss a horn and get deducted 10 points. But like I was saying, because of that drop-in, drop-out function, you can zip through. Now, gameplay-wise or view-wise, graphic-wise, I have a pretty high-end computer here, and I'm just kind of showing you the nice Polish countryside as it goes ripping by. But there actually are a wide variety of different views we have at our disposal here. One thing I could normally do if I weren't going 120 kilometers an hour is I can actually get out of this seat and walk out the door if I wanted. But obviously, I'm not going to do that because that would be kind of silly at this speed, and it'll yell at you if you try things like that. But there's a number of other views. I can kind of get some nice little external views. Picture of the water closet, just in case. You can see, again, not a lot of passengers on this particular one. Where's everybody today? And again, if you do some of the commuter trains, you will actually see that there'll be people who get in on and off, depending on what kind of station that you're coming through and everything along those lines. Now, as of right now, we have two very, very long sections of Polish track. Again, you're never going to get bored in that regard, because as long as you can always join one of these servers, you can literally grab something, any different part of that track at any given moment. Now, there's another really, really cool thing that they set you up with the servers that they gave us. And that's the fact they actually give you a real-time map of everything going on inside your server right now. Now, the reason this is so slick is you can actually see all the different people who are on. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. I'm getting yelled at, so I'm going to go push that button a few times. You can even see the different people who are operating the different stations, and you can actually go between them and see who's there. Now, the reason this is so super duper useful is at any point I wanted to, I could come in here and I could actually left click on somebody and say, hey, what's the deal with this one? And it's a great way to go ahead and kind of identify potential rides that you'd like to take at a particular point. Or it'll even give you the ability to go ahead and, plan your route out. One of the nice things is because the dispatch is so strong in this program, you're not really going to be stressing out that often as far as not being able to see. You can see it started raining, by the way. Don't touch that handle. There we go. One of the things you'll see is you actually get dynamic weather, you get dynamic time of day. That all will happen as you're just kind of cruising around. And that's obviously going to have an impact. Now, physics-wise is something everybody's kind of curious about. How accurate? Again, I don't operate trains in the real world, so who knows how ridiculous I'm being right now. But it feels very, very authentic. When you hit brake corners just the right way, when you hit the brakes, the pressure simulation, as you can see, I hit the brakes a minute ago, and I still have some pressure kind of backed up in it. That's incredibly realistic. The fact that I can bail on the brakes if I need to. I love the fact they give you the button for that. Really, really, really easy to use. I can blow a fuse in this very, very quick. Not a fuse, I can pop a breaker essentially on this with basically not paying attention to what I'm doing. All those are features that are all simulated in here, including obviously derailing, which I wouldn't want to demonstrate that one on a multiplayer server for obvious reasons. Oh, here comes the train sign. Let's see what we got here. So normally that for hitting that correctly, you get a little thing on the side that says you hit the thing on time or whatever it is. And again, it's just kind of neat. All these things can be turned on and off. I'm already way too fast there. It's all stuff that'll cover on another day as well. But other than that, it's a pretty neat program. I really like where they're going with it. There's some rumors that they're discussing having some routes in other parts of the world, which is pretty exciting. I'd love to see some American routes. I'd love to see some German routes, especially because just different types of rolling stock. This train is a real trip. Just the amount of buttons and different settings and stuff that you can do to get the sucker actually going is really cool. And they do, like I said, provide you a nice little tutorial for it that will walk you through it. But the reality is, most of the game, if you're not playing the couple single-player scenarios, you're probably going to be over here on multiplayer enjoying one of these scenarios, kind of experiencing these. Now, notice, by the way, that the estimated time for this scenario was 4 minutes, and now we're already pushing something like 8 minutes on it. So you can get an idea of how good those estimates can be. So we'll fast forward to the end, and there we are. You can see here the total time was a little more than they estimated, but it still gives you a pretty good idea of exactly what you have. It also gives you a little report. If you want to, you can hit the graph button. You can see just how doo-doo my speed was. I only got the horn right once. And again, you can see how I slowed down, went a little over, and all those other kind of components. Never could get the speed back up to 120 there, but it's a pretty good idea. So then I can go back to the main menu, just as easy as pressing a button, and you can join a different server, or you could do some dispatching, and you can go back to it. Now, there's a bunch of different options you have if you actually pop down a simulation here, which is kind of neat. And one thing I really get a kick out of is the fact that they have the system here that actually makes it so it's easier to see the signals. This is one of those things where it's like, it's kind of nice to have, but sometimes it doesn't work. Like it's like you'll have like 30 red dots in the distance. You're like, which one's mine? So it's nice, but it could be, and I appreciate I actually activated automated different piece here because it just makes my life easier. You also have plenty of options here. If I wanted to be silly, I could put this in Imperial. This would be absurd because that would make it very, very challenging for me because I would not necessarily know what I've achieved. So it's kind of one of those sort of pieces that's like, am I supposed to be doing 67? And the signs on the side, obviously you're not going to suddenly be in kilometers per hour, or miles per hour rather, so it's going to be difficult. So this is a cool program. We're pretty excited to see kind of where it comes out and sort of how it passes from this kind of a point forward. Right now, I'm checking it as we speak. It retails for $34.99. It's on the summer sale for $24.49. I'm sure they've done other sales. Right now, you're definitely paying for the future more so than you're paying for the now, in my opinion. Again, that's just kind of based on sort of the feature set, but you get a really, really neat piece, really, really interesting rolling stock, and that dispatching is really, really, really cool if you're into something like that. Enjoy.